The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction, and Ambassador Zexatar of the Vrillian Empire stood at the center podium, while thousands of beings from across the galaxy watched him speak about the dead world called Earth. 250 years had passed since the last transmission from the Blue Planet, and during all that time the galaxy had moved on without humanity, while trade routes shifted and new alliances formed, but Earth remained silent like a tomb floating in space. Zextar raised his four arms, and his voice echoed through the massive chamber as he spoke to representatives from hundreds of worlds about opening Earth for colonization, since no signs of life had been detected for over 2 centuries. The Zephyrian delegate shifted nervously in her crystal seat, because her people had once been friends with humanity, but even they had given up hope after decades of sending messages into the void with no response. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the deep space monitoring station called Horizon's Edge and watched the endless stars through the main viewing window while his crew worked at their stations like they had done every day for the past 5 years. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at the communications console and monitored the usual chatter from merchant ships and military patrols, but nothing ever came from the direction of Earth, which lay 40 light-years away in what everyone now called the Silent Zone. Jake had been assigned to this remote station because he had once argued with his superiors about abandoning the search for human survivors, but now even he was starting to believe that Earth truly was dead. The monitoring equipment hummed quietly as it scanned thousands of frequencies every second, looking for any sign of artificial signals, but for 2.5 centuries there had been nothing except the background noise of cosmic radiation. Amy suddenly sat up straight in her chair, and her fingers flew across her control panel as she detected something that made her heart race with excitement. A signal was coming from Earth. The transmission was weak but unmistakably artificial, and it consisted of a simple mathematical sequence that repeated every 30 seconds like a beacon calling out across the darkness. Jake rushed to Amy's station and stared at the readings, while his mind tried to process what he was seeing, because this changed everything they thought they knew about humanity's fate. The signal grew stronger as more transmission arrays on Earth came online, and the mathematical sequence became more complex with prime numbers and geometric patterns that could only be created by intelligent beings. Meanwhile, on Earth itself, Dr. Ben Rodriguez stood in a vast underground chamber filled with the most advanced communication equipment ever built by human hands. The global communications array had taken decades to complete and represented the combined effort of 15 billion people who had worked in secret beneath the planet's surface. While the galaxy above assumed they were all dead, Director Lisa Park walked across the polished floor toward Ben, while technicians made final adjustments to equipment that would soon make humanity's voice heard across the stars. Once again, Lisa had been chosen to lead this moment because her grandmother had been part of the original team that decided humanity should go silent during the great solar storm of 2137. The solar storm had damaged much of Earth's surface technology, but instead of immediately rebuilding, humanity's leaders had made a different choice. They decided to use the silence as an opportunity to grow stronger and build better technology, while the galaxy forgot about the small blue planet and its stubborn inhabitants. Underground cities had been carved from rock and metal, while new sciences were developed in laboratories hidden beneath mountains and oceans. The surface of Earth had been restored to its natural beauty, with forests and grasslands, covering the scars left by centuries of industrial development. Lisa looked at Ben and nodded slowly, because the time for hiding was finally over, and humanity was ready to rejoin the galactic community, but on their own terms this time. Ben's fingers moved across the control panel and initiated the transmission sequence that would announce to the galaxy that Earth was very much alive. The signal traveled through space at the speed of light and reached monitoring stations across dozens of star systems, where shocked operators suddenly realized that humanity had returned from the deadback in the Galactic Council chamber. Ambassador Zextar was still speaking about claiming Earth's resources when an aide rushed to his side and whispered urgent news about the transmission. The ambassador's 4 eyes widened in disbelief as he processed the information, while confused murmurs spread through the assembled delegates. Zephyrian representative stood up from her crystal seat, and her voice carried clearly through the hall as she announced that Earth was transmitting again after 2.5 centuries of silence. Chaos erupted in the council chamber as beings from across the galaxy tried to understand what this meant for their carefully arranged political systems and trade agreements. Some delegates were excited about reconnecting with humanity, while others worried about how Earth's return might upset the current balance of power. Jake Morrison stared at his communications display and watched as more signals began transmitting from Earth, while Amy worked frantically to decode the increasingly complex mathematical messages the signals contained. Not just numbers, but also coordinates, and what appeared to be an invitation for peaceful contact. Jake realized that humanity had not been destroyed by the solar storm or wiped out by disease or war, but had instead chosen to remain silent while they prepared for something that none of them could yet imagine. The news of Earth's transmission spread through the galactic communication networks faster than wildfire. And within hours, every major government and trading corporation knew that humanity had broken their centuries of silence. Admiral Ross Blake stood in the command center of a massive space station hidden in Earth's outer asteroid belt and watched as his officers coordinated the most complex operation in human history. The Terran Defense Initiative had been secretly maintained for 250 years by volunteers who passed down their duties through generations, while the galaxy above assumed that all humans were dead. Ross had been born on this station and trained from childhood to prepare for the day when humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy once again. His great-grandfather had been one of the original planners who decided that Earth needed time to grow stronger before rejoining the galactic community. Captain Danny Wright checked the systems aboard his ship called New Dawn and marveled at technology that surpassed anything humanity had possessed before the Great Solar Storm. The ship's hull was made from materials that could bend light around them, making the vessel nearly invisible, while its engines could travel between star systems in days rather than months. Navigator Kelly Stone plotted their course to the nearest Zephyrian outpost because those crystal beings had once been humanity's closest allies and might be willing to listen. Before other species tried to interfere, engineer Pete Collins ran final diagnostics on systems that represented centuries of human innovation and development while working in isolation from the rest of the galaxy. The New Dawn represented humanity's first attempt to reach beyond their solar system in 2.5 centuries, and its crew knew that they carried the hopes and fears of 15 billion people. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian Collective had immediately dispatched their fastest ship toward Earth with Ambassador Chinel aboard, because they needed to know if humanity had truly survived. Chinel remembered the old stories about humans from her grandmother's memories, because Zephyrians could share experiences directly through their crystal forms. The stories spoke of a young species that showed great promise but also great stubbornness in their refusal to follow the established ways of galactic civilization. As Chinel's ship approached the edge of the solar system, she was amazed to detect hundreds of artificial structures throughout the asteroid belts and outer planets. What she had expected to find was a dead system with maybe a few struggling survivors, but instead, she discovered a thriving civilization that had grown beyond anything the galaxy remembered. Earth itself appeared to be a garden world, with no signs of industrial damage, while massive orbital stations provided docking facilities for ships that looked far more advanced than anything currently used by other species. The first contact protocols that had been established centuries ago seemed inadequate for this situation because humanity was clearly not the same species that had gone silent during the solar storm down on Earth's surface. Dr. Kate Murphy led Ambassador Kinnell through underground cities that stretched for thousands of miles beneath the planet's crust. The cities were filled with parks and gardens and clean air, while millions of humans went about their daily lives in communities. That seemed almost utopian compared to the crowded worlds that most galactic species called home. Kate explained that humanity had used their isolation to solve many of the problems that had plagued them for centuries, including disease and environmental destruction and social conflict. The underground cities were connected by transport systems that could move people across continents in minutes, while the surface above remained a natural paradise where wildlife flourished. Ambassador Kinnell was stunned to learn that Earth's population had grown to 15 billion people during the centuries of silence, because most species struggled to maintain stable populations on single worlds. Professor Alex Turner showed the Zephyrian Diplomat laboratories, where human scientists had made breakthroughs in genetics and physics and engineering that surpassed the current galactic standard. Alex explained that isolation had forced humanity to become completely self-sufficient, which led to innovations that might never have been developed if they had remained dependent on galactic trade. The humans had learned to manipulate matter at the atomic level and create materials that were stronger and lighter than anything previously known to galactic science. They had also extended human lifespans to over 200 years, while eliminating most genetic diseases and enhancing physical and mental capabilities beyond what any species had thought possible. Commander Ryan Foster demonstrated these enhancements by lifting objects that should have required mechanical assistance while solving mathematical problems that would challenge most computer systems. Ryan explained that genetic improvements had been carefully implemented over generations to create humans who were stronger and smarter and more resilient than their ancestors. But the most impressive development was humanity's advancement in quantum communication technology, which allowed instantaneous contact across any distance. Dr. Ben Rodriguez showed Ambassador Kinnell how humans could now communicate with outposts throughout their solar system without any delay, despite distances that would normally require hours for radio signals to travel. The implications of this technology for galactic civilization were staggering because it would allow coordination of activities across vast distances that had previously been impossible. Kinnell realized that humanity had not simply survived their isolation, but had used it to evolve into something far more advanced than they had been when they first joined the galactic community. The Zephyrian ambassador sent urgent messages back to her government, explaining that the galaxy's understanding of human capabilities was completely outdated as news of humanity's technological advances spread through the galactic networks. Some species began to worry about what this might mean for the existing balance of power. The Vrillian Empire was particularly concerned because they had been planning to claim Earth's resources, and the discovery of a thriving human civilization complicated their expansion. Plans War Admiral Techmore of the Vrillian Fleet declared that humanity's long silence had forfeited their right to membership in the galactic community and that their world should still be considered available for colonization. But other species were more interested in establishing trade relationships with a civilization that clearly possessed technology beyond anything currently available. The galaxy found itself divided between those who welcomed humanity's return and those who saw it as a threat to their own interests and power. General Chris Taylor stood before the assembled alien delegates in Earth's primary diplomatic facility and prepared to reveal secrets that humanity had spent 2.5 centuries developing in complete isolation from the rest of the galaxy. The facility itself was a marvel of human engineering built into a mountain in what had once been called the Rocky Mountains, but now served as the heart of humanity's underground civilization. Representatives from dozens of species sat in specially designed chairs that accommodated their various physical forms, while translation devices allowed every word to be understood across the linguistic barriers that had once divided the galaxy. Chris had been chosen for this moment because his family had served in the Terran Defense Initiative for 5 generations and he understood better than most what humanity had accomplished during their long silence. He began by explaining that the great solar storm of 2137 had indeed damaged much of Earth's surface technology, but instead of immediately rebuilding humanity's leaders, had made a deliberate choice to withdraw from galactic affairs. The decision had not been made from fear or weakness, but from a recognition that humanity needed time to mature as a species before they could truly contribute to galactic civilization. Dr. Kate Murphy stepped forward and activated a holographic display that showed the quantum communication network that now connected every human settlement throughout the solar system. The technology allowed instantaneous communication across distances that had previously required hours or days for messages to travel, and it represented a breakthrough that could revolutionize how galactic civilization operated. Kate explained that quantum entanglement had been understood for centuries, but humanity had been the first to successfully scale the technology for practical use across interplanetary distances. The alien delegates watched in amazement as Kate demonstrated. Real-time conversations with human outposts on Mars and Jupiter's moons and the asteroid mining facilities that supplied Earth's underground cities. Professor Alex Turner then revealed humanity's advances in biological sciences that had eliminated genetic diseases and extended human lifespans far beyond what had been thought possible. Alex showed the delegates video recordings of humans who had lived for over 200 years, while maintaining the physical condition of someone a quarter their age. The life extension technology was not simply about living longer, but about maintaining health and vitality throughout an extended lifespan while continuing to learn and grow as individuals. Even more impressive were the genetic enhancements that had been carefully implemented over generations to improve human physical and mental capabilities without losing the essential qualities that made humanity unique. Commander Ryan Foster demonstrated these enhancements by performing feats of strength and agility that amazed the alien observers, while solving complex mathematical problems that would challenge most computer systems. Ryan explained that the enhancements were not about creating superhuman warriors, but about helping every human reach their full potential in both physical and intellectual pursuits. The genetic modifications had been implemented gradually over many generations, with careful attention to maintaining genetic diversity and avoiding the problems that had plagued other species' attempts at biological improvement. Dr. Lucy Adams revealed humanity's breakthroughs in materials science that had led to the creation of substances stronger than any known galactic materials while remaining lighter and more flexible. The new materials had made possible the construction of Earth's underground cities and the advanced spacecraft that now patrolled the solar system while remaining hidden from galactic observation. Lucy demonstrated how human scientists could now manipulate matter at the atomic level to create materials with precisely controlled properties for specific applications. The alien delegates were particularly interested in humanity's advances in energy production, which had made possible the construction and operation of their vast underground civilization. Professor Tony Clark explained how humans had learned to harness quantum fluctuations in space itself to generate unlimited clean energy without the environmental damage that had once threatened Earth's ecosystem. The energy technology was so efficient that humanity could power their entire civilization while maintaining Earth's surface as a natural paradise where wildlife flourished without interference. Captain Eva Martinez described humanity's exploration of their own solar system during the centuries of isolation and the discovery of resources and phenomena that had been unknown to galactic science. Human explorers had established permanent settlements on every major world and moon in their solar system while developing new technologies for surviving in extreme environments. The settlements were not simply mining operations or research stations, but thriving communities where humans had learned to adapt to life in space while maintaining their connection to Earth. Commander Grace Parker revealed that humanity had also used their isolation to develop advanced defensive technologies that could protect Earth from any conceivable threat. Defensive systems were so sophisticated that they could disable attacking spacecraft without causing permanent damage, while demonstrating humanity's commitment to avoiding unnecessary violence. Grace explained that the defensive technology was based on the same principles as the quantum communication system and could affect enemy ships across vast distances without requiring physical projectiles. The alien delegates began to understand that humanity had not simply survived their isolation, but had used it to solve fundamental problems that continued to plague galactic civilization. Ambassador Kinel of the Zephyrian Collective asked why humanity had chosen to reveal themselves now after centuries of successful concealment from Galactic. Observation General Chris Taylor explained that humanity had always planned to rejoin the galactic community, but only when they could contribute as equals rather than dependent junior partners. The time had come because humanity had developed technologies and perspectives that could benefit all species while helping to solve problems that threatened the stability of galactic civilization. Chris revealed that human scientists had been monitoring galactic communications throughout their isolation and were aware of growing tensions between species and the emergence of new threats. The most serious threat was something called the Void Plague that was consuming entire star systems while spreading toward the galactic core where most civilized worlds were located. Humanity believed that their unique experience with isolation and forced self-sufficiency had given them insights that might help combat this mysterious phenomenon. Dorben Rodriguez demonstrated how human quantum communication technology could coordinate defensive efforts across the galaxy in ways that had never been possible before. The technology would allow instant communication between fleets separated by thousands of light years while enabling coordinated responses to threats that moved faster than conventional messages. But the most important thing humanity offered was not technology, but perspective, gained from centuries of learning to work together as a single species without external dependencies, the alien. Delegates realized that humanity had spent their isolation not just developing new technologies, but also evolving socially in ways that could serve as a model for galactic cooperation. War Admiral Thekmor of the Vrillian Empire refused to accept that humanity had any legitimate claim to Earth after 2.5 centuries of silence, and he ordered his fleet to prepare for an immediate assault on the human homeworld, the Vrillian. Fleet consisted of 300 warships equipped with the most advanced weapons available to galactic civilization, and Thekmor was confident that any human survivors would quickly surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Thekmor had built his reputation on successful conquests of primitive worlds, and he saw no reason why Earth should be any different, despite the reports of advanced human technology that he dismissed as exaggerated claims. The War Admiral believed that humanity's long isolation had made them weak and desperate for galactic acceptance, which would make them easy to intimidate into submission. Captain Max Turner monitored the approaching Vrillian fleet from his position aboard Earth's primary orbital defense platform and coordinated with defense stations throughout the solar system. Max had trained for this moment his entire life, because human military planners had always known that some species would respond to humanity's return with violence rather than diplomacy. The orbital defense platforms were hidden among what appeared to be ordinary asteroids and space debris, but contained weapon systems that surpassed anything currently used by galactic militaries. Colonel Nina Hayes commanded the secondary defense grid from her station on Luna and maintained communication with defense installations on Mars and the outer planets. Nina's systems could track every ship in the Vrillian fleet while remaining completely undetected by enemy sensors that were designed to identify conventional military installations. The human defense network had been built over centuries using technologies that had been developed in complete secrecy, while the galaxy assumed that Earth was a dead world. Admiral Ross Blake coordinated the overall defense strategy from his hidden command station in the asteroid belt, while ensuring that human response would demonstrate restraint rather than aggression. Ross understood that how humanity handled this first military confrontation would determine whether other species saw them as protectors or conquerors. The Vrillian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system and began advancing toward the inner planets while broadcasting demands for immediate human surrender. Thekmor expected to encounter primitive orbital defenses that could be easily overwhelmed by his superior numbers and advanced weaponry. Instead, his sensors detected no military installations at all, which convinced him that humanity was even weaker than he had anticipated. The War Admiral ordered his ships to assume attack formation while targeting what appeared to be civilian installations around Earth, and its moon captain Max Turner waited until the Vrillian ships had committed to their attack approach before activating the first phase of Earth's defensive response. The space around the Vrillian fleet suddenly filled with energy fields that disrupted their weapons and propulsion systems while preventing them from targeting Earth's population centers. Thekmor watched in disbelief as his most powerful warships found themselves unable to fire their weapons or maneuver effectively while remaining completely undamaged. Colonel Nina Hayes activated the second phase, which used gravity manipulation technology to gently move the Vrillian ships away from Earth while keeping them trapped in the energy fields. The enemy fleet found themselves being herded like animals toward a designated area of space, where they could neither attack nor escape while their life support systems remained fully functional. Admiral Ross Blake opened communication channels with the Vrillian fleet and spoke directly to War Admiral Thekmor in his own language. Ross explained that humanity had no desire to destroy the Vrillian ships or harm their crews, but would not allow any attack on Earth's civilian population. The human admiral offered to release the Vrillian fleet immediately if Thekmor would agree to withdraw from Earth's solar system and open negotiations for peaceful contact. Thekmor was humiliated by his fleet's complete helplessness against weapons that seemed to operate on principles beyond his understanding. The Vrillian ships had been rendered powerless, without suffering any damage, and their crews were unharmed. But the demonstration of human capabilities was overwhelming. On the Vrillian homeworld, Sub-Commander Velkas watched the reports from Thekmor's fleet and began to question the Empire's aggressive approach to dealing with humanity's returned. Velkas represented a younger generation of Vrillian officers who believed that cooperation might be more beneficial than conquest, but they had been overruled by traditional military leaders. The complete failure of the attack on Earth provided evidence that the old ways of dealing with other species might not work when confronting human technology. Dr. Lucy Adams used Earth's quantum communication system to broadcast a message to every inhabited world in the galaxy explaining humanity's position on the Vrillian attack. Lucy's message emphasized that Earth had defended itself without causing any casualties because humans preferred cooperation to conflict whenever possible. The broadcast included detailed technical specifications for some of humanity's less sensitive technologies as a demonstration of their willingness to share knowledge with peaceful species. The message also contained a formal invitation for any species interested in establishing diplomatic relations to send representatives to Earth for negotiations. Throughout the galaxy, the news of the Vrillian fleet's defeat spread rapidly, and species began to reconsider their assumptions about human capabilities and intentions. The fact that humanity had demonstrated such overwhelming military superiority while choosing not to destroy their attackers impressed many galactic leaders who had expected a more violent response. Some species that had been considering their own attacks on Earth quickly abandoned those plans when they realized that the Vrillian Empire's most powerful fleet had been neutralized without casualties. Captain Danny Wright and the crew of the New Dawn continued their diplomatic mission to the Zephyrian Collective, but now found themselves being treated as representatives of a major military power. Navigator Kelly Stone reported that Zephyrian Space Traffic Control was giving their ship priority passage and escort vessels that had not been offered during their initial approach. Engineer Pete Collins monitored communications from other species' ships in the area and discovered that news of Earth's defensive capabilities had already reached every corner of galactic civilization. Galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's return would require a complete restructuring of political and military relationships that had been stable for centuries. War Admiral Thekmore found himself facing demands from his own government to explain how his fleet had been defeated without firing a single shot. The Vrillian High Command was divided between those who wanted to escalate the conflict and those who recognized that humanity possessed capabilities that made traditional warfare obsolete. Thekmore was forced to admit that human defensive technology operated on principles that Vrillian science could not explain or counter with existing weapons. The War Admiral's defeat marked the beginning of a new era in galactic politics where military power alone would no longer determine the relationships between species. President Sam Williams stood before the largest gathering of galactic representatives in recorded history as ships from hundreds of worlds formed a massive fleet in Earth's orbit for the first galactic assembly in 2.5 centuries. Assembly had been called to address humanity's return and establish new protocols for galactic cooperation, but it had become something much more important when reports arrived of the mysterious void plague consuming entire star systems. Sam had been elected as the first president of the United Earth government after humanity's decision to rejoin galactic civilization, and his words would determine whether the galaxy moved toward cooperation or continued conflict. The representatives floated in specially designed chambers aboard the massive assembly station that had been constructed in Earth's orbit using human technology, combined with contributions from dozens of species. Sam began his address by acknowledging the concerns that many species had about humanity's advanced technology and their long isolation from galactic affairs. He explained that humanity had not withdrawn from the galaxy out of arrogance or hostility, but from a recognition that they needed time to mature as a species before they could truly contribute to galactic civilization. The president offered to share human technological advances with any species willing to work together to address the growing threats that endangered all inhabited worlds. Sam's most important announcement was that humanity would provide their quantum communication technology to create a galaxy-wide network that would allow instant coordination between all member species. Captain Eva Martinez commanded the joint exploration vessel called Unity, which carried crew members from 12 different species on a mission to investigate the Void Plague's latest appearance. Eva had been chosen to lead the mission because of her experience commanding mixed crews during humanity's secret exploration of their own solar system. The Unity represented everything that galactic cooperation could achieve when species worked together instead of competing for dominance. Navigator Kelly Stone worked alongside Zephyrian crystal beings and Krallic insectoids to plot courses through regions of space where entire star systems had simply vanished. Engineer Pete Collins collaborated with Vrillian technicians and Aquarian water dwellers to maintain systems that combined the best technologies from multiple civilizations. The ship's quantum communication array allowed instant contact with Earth and other fleet elements, regardless of distance, while conventional ships would have required weeks to exchange messages as the Unity approached. The edge of the affected region, Eva's crew detected energy patterns that defied explanation according to current galactic science. Whole planets had been stripped of their matter while leaving behind fields of exotic radiation that seemed to consume anything that entered them. Dr. Tony Clark led a team of scientists from 6 different species in analyzing the phenomena and discovered that the Void Plague was not a natural disaster, but something artificially created. Tony's research revealed that the plague's behavior followed patterns that suggested intelligence behind its spread, but the nature of that intelligence remained completely unknown. Commander Grace Parker coordinated the largest joint military operation in galactic history as fleets from dozens of species converged on the plague's suspected origin point. Grace had been given overall command despite being human because her species' quantum communication technology was the only thing that made coordination of such a massive operation possible. The combined fleet included ship designs that had never been tested together and crew members who spoke hundreds of different languages. Each species brought their own tactical approaches and weapon systems, but they all shared the same goal of stopping the plague before it reached the galactic core. Dr. Ben Rodriguez worked with alien scientists to establish communication protocols that could function across the vast distances involved in coordinating multiple fleets. Ben's quantum communication network allowed commanders to share information instantly and respond to changing conditions without the delays that had made large-scale cooperation impossible in the past. The network also provided early warning systems that could alert inhabited worlds to the plague's approach while giving them time to evacuate if necessary. As reports came in from scout ships monitoring the plague's advance, it became clear that conventional weapons had no effect on the phenomenon. Plague seemed to absorb energy attacks while kinetic weapons simply passed through it without causing any damage. Admiral Ross Blake analyzed the tactical situation and concluded that military force alone would not be sufficient to stop something that operated outside the normal laws of physics. Ross recommended that the combined fleet focus on rescue operations and evacuation support, while scientists worked to understand the plague's true nature. President Sam Williams used the quantum communication network to address the entire galaxy and explain that humanity's long isolation had given them unique perspectives on dealing with seemingly impossible challenges. Sam revealed that human scientists believed the plague might be similar to problems that Earth had faced during their centuries of silence when they were forced to find solutions without external help. The president announced that humanity would share all of their research data with any species willing to contribute their own knowledge to solving the crisis. Captain Eva Martinez led her mixed crew deeper into the affected region and discovered something that changed everything they thought they knew about the Void Plague. Hidden within the energy fields that marked the plague's passage, Eva's sensors detected structures that appeared to be constructed rather than naturally formed. The structures were massive beyond comprehension and seemed to be moving with purpose rather than drifting randomly through space. Dr. Tony Clark's analysis of the structures revealed technology that was far older than any known galactic civilization, but showed signs of recent activation. Tony concluded that the plague was not consuming matter, but collecting it for some unknown purpose. Commander Grace Parker received Eva's reports and realized that the galaxy was not facing a natural disaster, but a first-contact situation with an intelligence that operated on a scale beyond anything previously encountered. Grace ordered all military units to maintain defensive positions while avoiding any actions that might be interpreted as hostile by whatever intelligence controlled the plague. The discovery that the Void Plague was artificially created changed the entire nature of the crisis from a disaster to be stopped to a communication problem to be solved. President Sam Williams called for an emergency session of the Galactic Assembly to discuss how to approach contact with an intelligence that possessed the power to consume entire star systems. The crisis had transformed humanity's return to galactic civilization from a political problem into an opportunity for unprecedented cooperation in the face of challenges that no single species could handle alone. Admiral Luke Davis commanded the largest fleet in galactic history as ships from every known species converged on the source of the Void Plague deep within an ancient star system that predated most current civilizations. Luke had been chosen to lead the mission because his experience coordinating Earth's defenses had demonstrated his ability to manage complex operations involving multiple species and technologies. The combined fleet included over 10,000 vessels ranging from massive Vrillian battleships to tiny Aquarian scouts, while human quantum communication technology allowed instant coordination across the entire formation. Dr. Hope Stevens led the scientific team that would attempt to establish contact with the intelligence behind the plague, and her research had revealed disturbing parallels between the entity's behavior and humanity's own period of isolation. Hope's analysis suggested that the plague was not malevolent, but confused and afraid after eons of solitude. In the depths of space, the entity appeared to be collecting matter and energy in an attempt to rebuild something that had been lost during its long dormancy. As the fleet approached the center of the affected region, they discovered structures that dwarfed entire planets while pulsing with energy that seemed to respond to their presence. Captain Ava Martinez piloted her ship Unity through the outer defenses of the massive construct while maintaining contact with the fleet through quantum. Communication links Eva's mixed crew worked together to analyze the alien architecture and discovered that it was constructed from the matter of consumed star systems arranged in patterns that suggested a desperate attempt at reconstruction. The entity behind the plague was trying to rebuild its home, but lacked the knowledge to recreate what had been lost during millions of years of dormancy. Ambassador Claire Roberts had volunteered to make direct contact with the entity because her diplomatic experience included situations where communication seemed impossible. Claire understood that the entity's destructive behavior was not motivated by hostility, but by loneliness and confusion after awakening to find its civilization gone. The ambassador's ship approached the central structure while broadcasting mathematical sequences and universal concepts that might be understood by an intelligence beyond current comprehension. As Claire's ship entered the entity's immediate vicinity, the plague's destructive effects suddenly stopped, as if the ancient intelligence was focusing its attention on these new visitors. Dr. Hope Stevens detected massive changes in the energy patterns surrounding the central structure as the entity attempted to process the concept that it was no longer alone. Hope realized that the entity had been dormant for so long that it had forgotten how to communicate with other forms of intelligence. Claire began broadcasting humanity's own story of isolation and eventual reconnection with galactic civilization using mathematical concepts and visual representations that transcended language barriers. The ambassador explained that humans understood what it meant to be alone and afraid in the darkness while struggling to maintain hope for eventual contact with others. The entity's response was immediate and overwhelming as it attempted to share its own story of loss and confusion through energy patterns that nearly destroyed Claire's ship. Admiral Luke Davis ordered the fleet to maintain position while Dr. Hope Stevens worked frantically to establish stable communication protocols with an intelligence that operated on scales beyond normal comprehension. Hope discovered that the entity was not a single being, but the collective consciousness of an entire civilization that had been forced into dormancy when their star system was destroyed by a cosmic catastrophe. The entity had awakened recently to find that its physical form was gone, and it had been trying to rebuild its civilization by collecting matter from surrounding systems. But the entity lacked the knowledge to recreate the complex social structures that had once supported its people, and its attempts at reconstruction had resulted in the destructive plague. Ambassador Claire Roberts spent days in direct communication with the entity, while learning about a civilization that had existed long before any current galactic species had developed intelligence. Claire discovered that the entity's people had once been explorers and teachers who had helped younger species develop their own technologies and societies. The entity was devastated to learn that its attempts to rebuild had actually destroyed inhabited worlds because it had not realized that new civilizations had developed in the galaxy. Ambassador Claire worked with Dr. Hope Stevens to develop a proposal that would address both the entity's needs and the galaxy's safety concerns. They suggested that the entity could work with the combined galactic civilizations to rebuild its society using donated matter and energy rather than consuming inhabited systems. The proposal included sharing the entity's ancient knowledge with current civilizations while providing the social contact that it desperately needed after eons of isolation. President Sam Williams used the quantum communication network to address every inhabited world in the galaxy and explain the breakthrough in understanding the void plague's true nature. Sam announced that the crisis had revealed the need for permanent cooperation between all galactic species to address challenges that exceeded any single civilization's capabilities. The president proposed establishing Earth as the center of a new galactic government that would coordinate responses to future crises while respecting each species' autonomy. The entity agreed to stop its destructive activities and began working with galactic scientists to develop new technologies that combined ancient knowledge with current innovations. Captain Eva Martinez was assigned to command the first joint exploration mission beyond the galaxy's borders to search for other dormant civilizations that might need assistance Eva's ship carried. Representatives from every major species, including human ambassadors trained in communicating with intelligences that operated on vast scales. The mission represented humanity's transformation from an isolated species to the bridge that connected different forms of intelligence across the universe. Commander Matt Turner stood on the observation deck of humanity's first intergalactic exploration vessel and watched as his ship prepared to carry the message of cooperation beyond their home. Galaxy Matt was the great-grandson of Captain Max Turner, who had defended Earth during the Vrillian attack, and he represented the new generation of humans who would explore the universe not as conquerors, but as teachers and healers. The ship's quantum communication array maintained constant contact with Earth, while its crew prepared to encounter forms of intelligence that might be even more alien than the entity they had recently befriended. Earth had become the diplomatic center of galactic civilization, where species came to resolve conflicts and coordinate responses to challenges that threatened all inhabited worlds. Humanity's long silence had ended, but their voice now echoed across the universe, carrying messages of hope and cooperation. To intelligences that had never imagined they were not alone. The galaxy had learned that isolation and fear could transform any species into a destructive force, but communication and understanding could heal even the deepest wounds caused by loneliness and confusion. The Void Plague had become humanity's greatest teacher by showing them that their own experience with isolation was not unique, and that every intelligence in the universe shared the same fundamental need for connection and understanding.